I mean, one of the things we were talking about, Alan and I were just chatting about earlier on, is before we go out and do a survey, we do quite a lot of sort of pre-survey desktop research. So we're looking at things like the flood risk, things like radon, radioactive gas. We're looking, what else are we looking at? Mining. Other things.
Planning searches, if the local council websites we can access will show whether the houses on the streets have applied for permissions to extend a house or have works done. So
what sort of, do you do that kind of pre-survey research?
Les, what do you guys do?
Well, we have access to see the listings when they're on sale, and we can see prior history. If they're in the New York City area range, they have a pretty good site that you can see the building history, complaints, and stuff going on. And certain townships have ways you can see if there was, open permits, and you can get a survey of the house. So if you go there and there's something built on that's not on it, you can see what's going on. But it doesn't really, any surveying or illegal structures doesn't really go in our report, other than because it starts going into the code stuff.
Yeah, I would say for us, we're certainly looking at flood risk. If I know you're in a flood zone, we're going to get analysis for that. As far as municipalities, they are so varied around here. Like Les said, I can go to some people, some municipalities' websites and get information. Other ones, it's almost virtually impossible. Other times, we'll kind of roll up to a house, just really, without even looking at anything. And sometimes I think that's an advantage, because I'm just going to go in and just kind of look at this without having any background information kind of, guiding me. We do it kind of on a play-by-play, I think, or house-by-house.
You also have, at least in Nassau County, one of the counties that we work in, you can go to the Department of Health, find out if they've had buried oil tanks that have been properly remediated, because that's a very big issue here on Long Island. A lot of people back in the 50s, a lot of builders back in the 50s actually put the oil tanks on the ground rather than inside, because a lot of houses were built on slabs. So we run across them quite a bit. You'll find an old vent pipe or just a fill pipe, and you go in the basement, you'll see clipped oil lines that show that it's an oil tank in the that's been underground outside the house. So you have to kind of do your homework on that and check and see if there's any abandonment certificate from the county, the Department of Health.
Mm-hmm. Deal with mining at all? I mean, one thing we have in certain parts of our country, there was historically a lot of coal mining and lots of other types of mining, and you can get subsidence issues, problems where you have, shafts that are collapsing, one thing and another. Do you have much like that to deal with?
No, nothing
like
that.
Not here. Certain other parts of the country, yeah, but not here.
Yeah.
So do you ever venture out? Or are you? I mean, I suppose you don't have to travel very far for surveys, do you? Do you ever go out into the countryside more and more rural areas?
Well, actually, Long Island's it's kind of a funny thing. You go from very dense populated areas with big housing developments, then you get out into a little more of a rural area where you've got acreage between structures, and then you get in certain areas you have farms, and the structures are very far apart. So we kind of run the gamut in this little island that we have, as far as what kind of makeup of the population and the structural how many structures you have.
And Les, you actually do probably more work in New York City than we do, right? So you're in Brooklyn a lot, right?
Brooklyn, Queens.
Yeah, because most of the areas of Brooklyn and Queens is where you have a lot of the foreclosure homes. So a lot of these mitigation companies that are fighting with the banks because of upside down mortgages send me in there to do an evaluation. So I go in, I do like a home inspection, but it's not as long as like what we do. I got to go in and do almost like it's a hybrid type appraisal and a condition report. And I just basically take some pictures, because they're all bad. They're all almost knockdowns, and just put a price on basically, walls and ceilings and roof, and they get an idea what's going on. But yeah, that's where like a lot of meat and potatoes going on now.
Do you ever get any apartments in Manhattan, or high-rise or two-bedroom apartments on the 15th floor, or is that kind of thing not inspected?
We do that. They're condos. Yeah.
Yeah, we
those
don't do that.
co-ops.
But the ones in Manhattan, I know guys who do go into Manhattan a lot. Yeah, they're getting pretty good money for doing that kind of work. You got to deal with, obviously, the traffic is more intense, the parking issues, but you can kind of offset that by the cost you're going to get paid for doing the job. But to me, it's a lot of work. Go ahead, Alan.
No, I say Andrew gets quite a few instructions, don't you, in central London? I think you get quite good fees for some of those.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, you mentioned one thing earlier on about when you were looking back at sort of information prior to a survey. Is there a central database of survey reports? Is there a record kept of those that somebody can access into the future?
No, but interesting is New York, no, but other states, and by going to the national conferences, there are some states where when the house is put up for sale, and if there was ever an inspection or a survey done on it, it's held with the house. So when the inspector goes there, he has the luxury of asking, hey, can I see a copy of your inspection report? And he can look at it and they can give it to him. We don't have that here in New York, in this state, but there are some that do have that. But they're not anywhere that somebody can get prior, but you can get it on the house.
Right. That's interesting, because one of the things that RPSA, we've been working with other sort of people within the house buying and selling industry, is talking about creating property logbooks. So you build up a complete picture of the property and all the history of it, all the legal documentation, and that can stay with the property going forwards. It's something that doesn't exist at the moment. But we've been talking to a number of organizations and also government about how this sort of thing could be established. It also leads on to, at the moment here, it is only really the buyer of the property that would commission a survey or a home inspection. And it's never the seller, the vendor of the property who commissions it. Is that the same for you?
For the most part, I mean, there's a small percentage over here where we have seller inspections, but where we are in Long Island, it is a very small percentage. I think it's a wise idea. I think it's a great option for people to do, but it's very difficult to get that through to the real estate market. I know Les also does work with some real estate offices. So what's their take on these sellers inspections, Les?
They're a great idea. I do get some people, but everybody thinks their house is perfect. They don't need it. But I do get requests from people who have an idea already that they're afraid of something wrong with their house. So they want me to go there and say, hey, I'm having issues here, having an issue over here, like in various parts of the house. Can you give me a whole inspection? And then they ask me about their concerns, because they obviously know people are living in a house for a long time, and they kind of know, like, this may come up on an inspection in the future. So those people that are, conscientious and are, trying to look forward without having any problems are good. But again, most people think their house is perfect, like everybody.
And the ones that don't, they just put boxes and boards and stuff in front of whatever the problem happens to be.
Interestingly, we had back in 2007, the government here introduced something called the Home Information Pack, which was a pack of information prepared by the seller of the property, and that originally it was going to include a survey inspection, and they created a new qualification called a home inspector. Up until then, everyone had always been called a surveyor, but they created a new qualification called a home inspector, which actually was how I came into the industry. And it lasted until 2010, until we had a new government and they abolished it. And now everyone knows that it was a really great idea and shouldn't have been abolished, but it became a very, the name Home Information Pack became a very dirty word in government, and now you're not allowed to mention it, because it's it's something that should not be mentioned. It's a bit like mentioning Voldemort in Harry Potter. You're not allowed to talk about home information packs in the presence of anybody from government. But everybody knows it was a great idea, and certainly, I've thought, and I don't know about, Alan and Andrew as well, whether you think it's a good idea that we look to try and promote the idea of a seller survey. Make your house, gold plate your house by putting a survey with it.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea, and I know there are some companies that do this, not in this area, but that have a significant part of the business doing that. And if you could find a way to market that, that would be awesome. But again, for us, a lot is driven by the real estate agents who are listing the houses, and they prefer, at least in my experience, to say let's see what they find, right, and then we'll do it. Versus being upfront about it and coming up with problems. Like Wes said, they'll hide things, on purpose. So I'm sure you have the same.
Yeah.
But if you could find a way to market that and tap into that niche, I think it would be awesome for everybody. Fantastic.
Well, the issue that we're having in the market here, I can say in New York, I think maybe other places, there is a form that the realtors have to get signed by the homeowner when they take on the listing. That has questions anywhere from how long have you lived here? Do you have any underground oil tank? Were there any fires? And blah, 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 blah. Because there was an issue here that someone bought a house and they said they didn't have wetlands and they couldn't put a pool and it got all held up. Big court case. So they came out with that form, and the form has to be signed by the time the house goes into escrow or, pre-sale, or just before, actually closes. Has to be given to the people. And it's great. So you figure everybody was like, it's going to be a great thing. Everybody's going to know what's going on with the house, and they have to be truthful. And at the very end of the question here, it says, if you do not provide this form, you have to give $500 back at closing. So what do you think everybody does?
$500 at closing.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll lie through my teeth if it's only going to cost me $500.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's called the property condition disclosure statement, and I've seen maybe 2 in the 15 years that I've been doing this that have been handed to me during the course of home inspection.
What about the lead paint disclosure that the real estate agent has them sign? 90% of the houses that you inspect on Long Island are all built pre-60s. So
that's interesting. What's the typical age of the properties you're looking at then?
I think in average, what would you think, about 50, 60 years old?
Yeah.
65?
Mm-hmm. And we have some. Go ahead, Les.
Yeah, if you're in the suburbs, it's about 70 to 50 years old, unless you're going to the old port towns. And then when you go into the city, you're at 100 plus on brownstones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. So nothing the vintage you guys have.
No.
What are the typical sort of problems that you find in houses of that age?
Well,
older homes?
I mean, electrical issues we find in virtually every house we go into. Structural problems we find a decent amount because people like to alter. Everybody wants to have like an open type look, and they take things out, and you can do it as long as you compensate. But most people don't compensate. So definitely that. Termite problems. I know we have a lot of them depending on the age of the house. Roof issues, water leaks. Those are really the big areas. If we're going to have a liability claim, like we were talking about, it's typically going to be structure, roof issues, or water leaks or something. But electrical is definitely a big issue for us.